Does your business provide a quality service or product? If the answer is yes, then there is a combination of tactics that can be customized to fit your unique business that makes your business super profitable, creates wealth, and makes a difference in the process. I know this because I've built a few tiny businesses to more than $70 million. You're listening to the Entrepreneurs Radio Show. Conversations with self-made millionaires and high-level entrepreneurs that will grow your business. Hey, it's Travis Lane Jenkins. Welcome to episode number 106 of the Entrepreneurs Radio Show, a production of RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com. Today I'm going to introduce you to Mark Stevens, author of Your Marketing Sucks. Now, I don't know if your marketing sucks. Most people's does. So, now in case you just started listening, each and every week I connect you with rockstar entrepreneurs that explain their journey to success and what's been the key principles to finding a high level of success as an entrepreneur, so that you can see that successful entrepreneurs, really successful entrepreneurs, are just everyday people that stayed committed to taking action each and every day. Also, I want to take a brief minute before we get started and say thank you for an online review. For those of you that have written reviews outside of the U.S., just in case you don't know this, we can't see those reviews on our account here in the U.S. because, of course, my account is in the U.S. So recently I found an app that allows me to pull reviews from all around the world so that I can start saying personally thank you to several people from all around the world that have written reviews, and I just didn't know that. So I want you to know that it hasn't gone unnoticed it's gone unnoticed, but it hasn't gone unappreciated now that I know about it. So basically today, I want to say thank you to Corey over in Canada. Corey Johnson 777, you gave us a 5-star rating, wrote amazing content. Corey, I want to thank you for leaving such a wonderful, detailed review. I read all of these reviews and they really do matter. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Now, as a reminder, if you enjoy the show and you find value in what we're doing, then I'd really appreciate you taking a minute and writing a review on iTunes or Stitcher. It will help us reach more entrepreneurs. And of course, we'll thank you in person on air. I also want to remind you that I have a section on the website of RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com where you can ask me anything about your business, marketing, management, pricing, client problems, sales problems, anything that you feel like is holding you back from that next level of success. All you've got to do is click on the button. There's a little icon of a microphone on the right side of the screen. Click on that button. It's like leaving a voicemail. Be sure and give me a quick background of your business. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start releasing short episodes, little 5-10 minute episodes in between these interviews where I answer your questions on air. Now, I'll keep your last name private. If you're not comfortable with leaving a voice message, you can just opt in, get my email, and send it to me. That's fine also. One last thing, I want to remind you that there's 3 ways that you can take these interviews with you on the go instead of just sitting at your computer and listening to them. I'm fine with whichever way you do it. You can go through iTunes, Stitcher, or Android, although they have very clunky search functions. So just go to RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com, click on the iTunes, Android, or Stitcher right there on the menu bar. And what that will do is it will take you directly to the podcast where you can subscribe to the show there and then download it on your phone or stream it on your phone and listen to it whenever it's good for you. So now that we've got all that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get down to business. What do you say? Without further ado, welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you.
Man, Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't mean to step on you. I'm excited to have you here. You're the author of Your Marketing Sucks. I love that title. Do you mind giving me kind of the backstory of how you got into where you're at today and maybe what the pivot point was for your success?
Sure. It's I actually spoke about this at a commencement address I gave to a college, a local college. There was a day, I don't know why, I came from a lower middle class family in one of the boroughs of New York City, Queens, lower middle class, and kind of a messed up family, and not kind of a messed up family, a messed up family. And one day I was 16 and I was walking through a parking lot on a gray February day, and my mood was gray, the skies were gray, everything just seemed blah. And I looked up at the sky with, I don't know what prompted it, and I said out loud, but not out loud enough for people to think I was a crazo, just sort of to hear myself speak. And I said, I promise I'll never be ordinary. And I made a pledge to myself that I wouldn't be ordinary. And so there, I took that pledge seriously. And I don't know where it came from, but then it sort of drove me to figure out ways when I had. So the next year, my dad died, and I was 17. He was 40. It was very sudden. He left $84, and no life insurance or anything like that. So, and my mom sort of was a nice person, but she sort of wasn't into mothering that much. She sort of took a hike too. So I was there with my 14-year-old sister. I was 17, and I had to figure out what I could do. And I made that pledge a year earlier not to be ordinary. Now I was faced really with a test. No money, no family. My sister needs me. My mother actually needed me. Couldn't pay the rent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure that it was in my DNA already, but I just went on a route to, first of all, stabilize the family.
Right.
I did. And there's some funny stories in that. They weren't funny at the time, but they're kind of funny now, and I can go back if you want me to. And then find a path for myself. And the path led me to business. And I started to build companies, little tiny ones, and then they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And selling companies, building and selling. And I've had a life of intense curiosity, very strong sense of drive, determination to succeed, and a love of growing things. And that's sort of a short summary of, and I also, as part of that, I've also always said that, another thing I said to myself when I was quite young at that part of my life, I will always obey the law because I believe in the rule of law, but I will never follow the rules because the rules are made up by somebody else. I mean, and they're imposed upon me, and they're all, if you look at business rules and social rules, most of them are pretty stupid.
Right.
And so I said, I'm going to make my own rules. I'll follow the law and make my own rules. And those are sort of the underpinnings of who I became and who I am today.
You know, what's interesting is I have a lot of the similar framework mindsets and pieces, and I think most people that have found success do. That didn't make me a good student. I didn't want to follow rules. I was, a rule breaker myself, and not for the sake of breaking the rules, but if something seemed like BS, I would say so, right? And and I've come from a very dysfunctional background, and I think at times that can put the fire in your belly. There was an urgency for you to get out there and provide for yourself and your sister. What did you do initially that allowed you to pay the rent and get things covered and live, basically?
I actually got a job with I answered an ad. First of all, I said to my mom, you gotta, after she sort of came back, you have to get a job. She had always told me about her high school years, and so one thing she never told me was that she never graduated. And when I told her, Mom, I got to go get your job, get out your diploma, she said, well, I never graduated. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, I said, you told me all about your high school years. And she said, yeah, but I quit the last week. And I almost wanted to reach across the table and strangle her, just not actually, but I couldn't believe that anybody would quit high school in the last week.
Right.
And I asked her, Mom, how could you quit the last week? And she told me with a straight face, as if this was, everybody would feel the same way. You know, Sinatra was playing at a ballroom in New York, and she said, I got to go see him. And that made all sense in the world to her. So I actually went to the Department of Education in New York City, and I lied to them and told them that my mother had, high school had burned down, it had burned down, but I told them that her diploma went with it. And they said, sure, we'll look it up and send you a replacement, blah, blah, blah. And then, sometime later they called me back and said, yes, the school did burn down, which I knew, but your mother never graduated. And I said, yes, she did. I was lying. Had to save myself. They said, no, she didn't. Yes, she did. And anyway, it went on for like 4 weeks where I was also fielding complaints from lawyers and lawsuits for my dad's death. And I finally said to them, look, if you don't give me a diploma from my mother, it's a widow and 2 kids. I'm going to come down. I looked up the address of the Board of Ed, and I said, I'm going to come down to 14 Broome Street or whatever it was in New York, and I'm going to get it myself. And I guess I put a little fear of God in them, because I actually got my mom an equivalency diploma, stuck her in the car, drove her to the New York City library system. I read that they needed a clerk, got her a job as a clerk. And I don't know, in today's dollars, let's say she was making $200 a week. And I happened to get a job with a very wealthy family about 10 miles from where I lived, in a whole different world, though. It was the Whitney family. John Hay Whitney had been the ambassador to the Court of St. James. He had built the Herald Tribune, which used to be a big newspaper in New York, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I drove in with this piece of junk car I had, thinking I was going to be a sort of like handyman kid for a local family in a split level. And I rode into a 1,000-acre estate with a fox hunt going on. This is a true story. And I drive in my broken down car with a tailpipe dragging on the floor. And they were so out of touch with reality that I got this job from them, to actually help the guy who was the chief botanist on the estate. It was like a feudal manor. And because they were out of touch, they paid 3 times the going rate, not realizing it. So I patched together enough money for us to get a small studio apartment, 1-bedroom apartment. I lived in the living room. My sister and mother lived in the bedroom. And then I went day by day. It was a horrible black time in my life. I was miserable. I just wanted my mom and sister to survive, and I was able to pull that off. And then when my mom got remarried, which was a few years later, my sister went off to school, which I was able to get some loans and some people to help. I came up with my first business concept, which was a syndicated column for small businesses. The name of the column was Small Business. I came up with the idea. I really didn't know very much about syndicated columns, but I knew about Ann Landers and Art Buchwald and things like that at the time. I called up the newspaper on Long Island, which is the next area from Queens in New York City. It's not in New York City, but it's adjacent to it. Newsday is a big newspaper. Told them about my idea. They said, sounds interesting. If you do 12 columns for free, we'll look at them and maybe we'll run your columns. I wrote 12 free columns. They looked at them and they started running my column. Make a long story short, I created a syndication business. And my column, called Small Business, was running in about 100 newspapers around the country, all of which were my clients, all of which paid me, and that was sort of the real beginning. I mean, I had a business earlier. I sold Christmas trees when I was I created a Christmas tree store when I was 15. Bought a truckload of trees from Canada. Got a Texaco station to give me the space to sell my trees. But I learned a heck of a lot. And there was a series of businesses like that, sort of job businesses, where I actually invested in. But the first real business was the syndicated newspaper column.
Interesting. And so how did you monetize that first business? How do you monetize a syndicated column? Do you get paid for it be airing in different papers?
Yeah, each newspaper pays you separately. It used to be per week. So they paid you X dollars per week to run the column. It came to the attention of Universal Press Syndicate, my column, they ran places like, they ran some very prominent columns and cartoons like Doonesbury. And they approached me and they wanted to take it over. They had a sales force, etc., buy the rights. I would split it 50-50. I agreed. And I was really excited because they started selling it and they were getting a tremendous response in the marketplace. But ultimately, I had an out in my contract, and I took it back from them after a year because I was better doing it myself. I was making more money, and I was keeping all the intellectual property. But that's how you monetize it. First, you monetize it by each newspaper pays you. Secondly, when you're in a lot of newspapers, people call you to consult. They read about what you're doing, and I was still very young. I was 22, something like that, and I was consulting with companies. And sometimes places wanted to just use your content for commercial purposes without an endorsement, and they would. I remember one time. So one time I was 23, and MetLife contacted me. And one of my columns I wrote about for small business was about the financial lives of small business owners. And they wanted to run one of my columns with no endorsement or anything. I guess some newsletter or something that they had. So I said, sure, how much you want to pay? And they said, well, how much will it be to run? And I said, let me get back to you tomorrow. So I said, I'll shoot for the moon. This was in 1972. When you think about the dollar value, bear that in mind. They just wanted one column to just run in a newsletter. And I said, okay, $15,000. I never seen $15,000 in my life. And they said, who do we make the check out to? And I got the $15,000. And so it was like, I said to myself, this is how the world works. And actually, so you monetize it that way, and then you monetize it by, the next thing I did was start to write books and develop a consulting firm around small business consulting. And I had an intuition for it. I learned as I was writing and interviewing companies. I had some exposure through some of the things my dad did, and his personality were helpful to me. He was dead, but I learned from him. He was the greatest mentor I ever had. And even though we had a difficult relationship, I thank him for everything I am and learned. And so I went on my way. That was the beginnings of my business career. Right.
Well, you know what I think is illustrative and why I like dissecting everyone's path to success is, so what you're describing is a front end, back end model. So, your front end, you're monetizing through all of the different papers, right? And then your back end, is your consulting piece of the business, right? Which is normally the most profitable part, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how does take me down the path? How does that segue into a marketing firm? Something that really, let me add to that statement, something that really strikes the interest of mine is, as I know that you've have a roster of clients that include a lot of big corporate people, Nike, GE, people like that. And what I find so interesting about those businesses is hardly any of them use any direct response methods, which I believe for the most part is ego-based, maybe not even ego-based for the big corporations, but not monetarily responsible. It doesn't provide a direct return. So what's your feeling on that, and do you agree?
Well, I do. I mean, I wrote Your Marketing Sucks because so much of, and it became a big global bestseller, is because I do believe that so much of what passes for marketing is just an aesthetic puppet show.
Right.
That makes the people who do the work, the so-called marketing work, feel good and win awards and all that. But it doesn't do the only thing marketing needs to do. The only legitimate goal of marketing is to grow revenue. It doesn't have to be anything else, and it should not win awards for creativity. We won't accept awards at my company. My company is MSCO. It's in its 20th year. I founded it based on the principle that most marketing sucks. And my book, Your Marketing Sucks, was, just simply highlights our philosophy here. But you're exactly right. There's so much that's going on under the name of marketing that's really simply frustrated artists trying to show how cool or creative they are when they don't really realize that and they're not business people at all, and they don't realize that the true creativity is on the part of business people.
Right.
They're more. That's where ultimate creativity comes. I mean, you can be creative in any field. I think the most creative person who ever lived was not Picasso; it was Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
Einstein was the most creative person who ever lived. Period. No one came close.
And what makes you say that?
Newton was second.
What makes you say that?
Because he took the elements that we all see and bundled them up into an idea and a concept that nobody ever thought of or nobody ever had, and that changed the world.
Right.
Steve Jobs, who was a great businessman, said he wanted to put a ding in the universe. He didn't. He did something. He did really cool things. He was a great businessman. He was a fantastic person, character. I don't mean easy guy to get along with. That he wasn't. But he was certainly one of the greatest business people who ever lived. But he didn't put a ding in the universe. Einstein did. Newton did. So we have to re-examine creativity and look at, like Walt Disney did, that's creativity. And not just because it's a sort of a creative theme park and cartoons, etc. What he did, his ability to create that business, that's amazing. And so the people who are working with PMS colors and fonts and all that, they can certainly be creative, but they have this view that business people are not creative. They are, and aesthetics is what drives the process. No, marketing is business. And once you create a marketing department, so to speak, you are getting in the way of the true power and value of marketing, because it should not be balkanized.
Right.
Away from anything but growing a company. All of our clients know that our focus here is to grow their business, period.
Right. Yeah, so let me qualify that from my side, okay? There's so much puffery and almost a kind of, I hate to say it, but a form of scamming with advertising, because people believe that it's about witty jingles, it's about funny billboards, it's about the latest trends and all those other things, whereas it's about making the phone ring, it's about quantifying the efforts. And I deal with lots and lots of businesses, and hardly any of them know what advertising is effective for them and what's not. They are not tracking the lead sources. They're not tracking the conversions. They're not tracking it all the way down into the cycle, all the way to the point of sale. And so many people see these gigantic companies do this ego-driven, ego-based, silly advertising, and then they think, well, if it's working for these big companies, then I'm going to do the same thing, and they try to copy it. And so that's what I've seen, that's what I've noticed, and I made that mistake as a business owner myself very early on, although I come to realize that I couldn't play with the big boys, so I needed to get results with my marketing. And so what I hear you saying is like Picasso, his work is esoteric, whereas Einstein took an idea and thought and translated it into something. Is that the difference that you're drawing here?
Yeah, well, Einstein did something that had a tangible return on investment,
quantifiable. Yeah.
So, he actually changed the way we do things. He made impossibilities possible. I don't want to detract from Picasso's abilities as an artist, as ability to move people, but there is a difference. And let me revert back to your question about advertising, which is just a metaphor for everything you do in business, marketing / business. We started, we're 20 years old, as I said. We went on the radio. Most marketing firms don't advertise themselves. They tell other people to do it, but they don't spend their own money.
Right.
Because they don't believe in it. They believe in it with your money, not with theirs.
Right. I completely agree with you.
So I decided to advertise on the radio for my company in the New York tri-state area 6 years ago. I put down $10,000 on a 2-week flight on WCBS in New York radio. We made $147,000 on the first 10,000. And you should, by the way, you shouldn't do anything in marketing you can't track. So if you're not tracking it, and you say you can't track it, which you actually can, but if you say you can't track it, stop it. Stop it. So we made $147,000 on the first 10,000, so we doubled down, tripled down. Last year we spent $1.2 million on advertising, radio advertising, because it just works. And it works. I'm not in the mood to give contributions to radio stations. And a month ago, we started going on TV, less than a month ago. And that's working great. Not working great in the standpoint of it's great to see my spots on TV. It's great because people are coming in the door and they're listening to our message and they're understanding that we provide marketing in an entrepreneurial way to companies of a size, many small and mid-size. We've worked for some of the giants in the world, but like you said, Nike, Mars, AIG, et cetera. But most of our clients are small and mid-sized businesses who cannot get marketing guidance, advice, implementation, execution from the typical marketing firm. You have to be working with a unique firm focused on their growth, not on the beauty of their aesthetics. Mm-hmm. So when people say if they don't know if their advertising is working, they should stop it.
Right. Yeah,
if somebody has kids and they give them advice and they tell the kids, don't drink and drive. And I have 2 sons, they're grown now, but when they were kids, I told them that all the time. But let's say I said to you, you asked me, Mark, do you tell your kids to drink and not to drink and drive? And I say, yeah, I tell them that all the time. And you said to me, well, does it stop them? Are they drinking and driving? And I said, I don't know. And I just walk away. How dumb would I be?
Right.
Why is there any difference? Same thing.
Right.
It's not the same thing because it's more at stake when your kids are drinking and driving, but I like to exaggerate to make a point. You wouldn't walk away. You'd say, hold on. How do I know? You'd look, you'd see, you'd look for hints. Does their breath ever smell? They seem like they're drunk. Are they getting in accidents? But the same thing with marketing and advertising as a subset of that. You need to know if it's working.
Right.
Yeah, you can't invest you don't spend on advertising and marketing, you invest in it. And you can't invest in anything with good faith. How are you doing on your investment portfolio? I don't know. I must be doing good. You ever check? No. Did your rep ever tell you? No. Well, who would have that conversation? So we have to, have a gut check with ourselves to say, if we can't measure it, or it's not performing, I have people come in all the time and say, you know, we've been advertising in this magazine or used to be in the Yellow Pages or whatever, and we spend a lot of money per month. We don't know if it's working, but we do it anyway because we're afraid to stop. Fear never works. Fear is a terrible thing.
Right.
It isn't good for anything. It never adds value. It's a loser. You can't run your life with fear.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like 20 plugs plugged into the wall, and they don't know which one they can unplug and which one needs to stay plugged in because they're not tracking any of that. And that's more of a common problem than I think most people realize. I followed a very same trajectory. We started out advertising 1,000 a month, and then 2,000, and then 5,000, and then 10, and then 20. Until we graduated up to spending $120,000 a month. That's an insane amount of money to advertise. But when you're tracking, it's not that insane because you're getting a return on it. And so it's really a revolving cycle. I get that 120 back and then many fold, and I take and reinvest it again, right?
Yeah.
And we used to... I would scare the living daylights out of the TV and radio stations because I tracked everything. And all of them, every station will tell you they're the number one in their market at something. And really, if you listen closely, it's just a slight alteration of the wording that they're using, that they're number one at something. They're number one, if you listen closely, between 18, 24 demographic or whatever it is, right? And for me, since we tracked everything, all of them grew to know that I could turn my monitor around and show them whether I'm getting any calls from their commercials and what time those calls come in and whether they come from a cell phone and all that other stuff. And that strikes the fear out of a lot of advertising sources because they're not used to people being able to track. And so you can correlate an ROI straight back to that money that you've spent with that station, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so you
have to
ultimately eliminate the ones that aren't working and double down on the ones that are, right?
Yeah, and when you said that's an awesome amount of money or a tremendous amount of money, well, actually, it may be too little.
Right.
When I looked at last year and saw that we were spending 1.2 million, I realized that we need to spend more because it's working.
Right.
And we're making money on every dollar we spend. So that's why we started TV less than a month ago. So it's actually, if you make anything in marketing work, whether it's PR, events, salespeople, advertising, whatever initiative you're using, and you're generating ROI on it. That's why it's a central theme of my firm and my book, Your Marketing Sucks. If you're generating positive ROI, you need to continuously reinvest until you start to see a point of diminishing returns.
Right.
If I told everybody listening, every time you go into a casino and you bring $5,000, and using a certain system that I've got, this is all nonsense, I'm just using this as a crazy example, but to drive the point home, you would walk out with double what you came in with. So you tested me the first time. You went in and you brought $5,000, you walked out with $10,001. You tested me again and you walked out with $10,005. So, I mean, you walked out with, I said if you brought in 5,000, I forgot what I said to bring in, but let's say you brought in 5,000, you walked out with 10,001. You tried it again with the 5,000, you walked out 10,002. You would say to yourself, well, you should. Next time I'm going to bring in 10,000. Right. Because what Stevens is telling me is working. I'm doubling my money every time I go in. It's the same. There's a basic concept underlying that with marketing. If you're generating, you have to look at that ROI number, return on investment. Where you are generating ROI, keep increasing the spend until and if you reach a point of diminishing returns. If you're not generating ROI, and if you don't know if you are, you're probably not, stop it and find a avenue where you will start to generate ROI. And start small. Don't start big.
Right.
Don't start big. If you hear about my metaphorical lesson for the casino, instead of bringing in the 5,000, bring in 500 and test me. If you find you walk out with 1,000, then bring in 5,000 the next time.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. What do you feel like are the key components to running a successful marketing campaign these days? Whether it's a top 3, top 5, what off the top of your head, what are the key elements that you would tell people to look for or to do?
I would say that what you need to be, and this is something that I think may come as a surprise to a number of people, but I would say start with the recognition that you need to be provocative. Your message is very important. So people will say to me all the time, well, we tried advertising or whatever it is, it didn't work. So advertising or direct mail or another initiative doesn't work. Well, I said, well, let me see the message. And they show me some plain vanilla, pablum message. Who's going to pay attention to that? Don't forget, we go out with the message, your marketingsucks.com.
Right.
That's provocative. We do that with all of our clients. So the quality of the message, it's got to be provocative, strong, compelling. People have to turn heads is number one, by far. Whatever the marketing initiative is. Number two, you need to have an integration of elements. People say, I have a website, nobody visits it. Well, what are you doing to drive them there? So, well, let's take the advertising campaign or the PR campaign or whatever. Once you have the provocative message and you create a provocative spot, you need to have a landing page. I wouldn't drive them to a homepage. I would drive them to a landing page about that specific element that you are promoting in your provocative message. And then you need to make sure there's a good, so the integration is critical. You need a whole set of elements that are integrated for the model to work effectively. Mm-hmm. And finally, you need to be able to deliver a good product or service, because that's what reinforces the sell. Now, people listening to this may realize, my product or service really isn't great. It's okay, but it's not great. People don't buy okay twice. And they don't buy what they like, usually not even the first time. They only buy what they love. Sitting behind me in my conference room is a portrait of Marilyn Monroe, not because I'm a big Marilyn Monroe art fan, but because she's symbolic of the key principle we use here at my firm, MSCO, and that are incorporated in my book, Your Marketing Sucks, which is that companies have to make the transition from like to love. If you settle for the fact that people like your company products or services, you will ultimately go out of business. If you make the transition over to people loving what you're offering, big difference.
So let me make sure I understand number 3. Did you say make it an offer that they would love? Is that what I'm to extract from this?
An offer and or product or service. It has to be. If it's both, that's best. So they have to be a great offer, and the product or service cannot be one that the people like. It has to be one that you work on. Don't forget, marketing is not just about the advertising, the PR, websites, and all that. You're selling something. And the thing that you sell, Steve Jobs knew this so well. I'm going to make a product, first of all, that people didn't know they could have. Not that they wanted, that didn't even know they wanted. So the element of surprise is important in all of business. Secondly, when they do see my product, they're going to fall in love with it much more than they do with any other competitor product. And you go into an Apple store and you feel those products. I mean, I went in recently to an Apple store near where my office is because I couldn't there was some malfunction, appeared to be some malfunction in my iPad. And I thought I needed a new battery for the charger. It wouldn't charge. But one of the guys fixed it immediately, quickly, no new battery. And while he had it in his hand, he took out a window cleaner and he sprayed it and cleaned it and put my iPad that I already owned into a beautiful little bag for me to go away with. Something that isn't done in most businesses.
Right.
But while I was there, I said to him, what else can I buy? I don't need anything, but I want to buy something. Everything looks so delicious. And he started asking me, like, what do you have? And I told him I have an iMac at home. I have a iPhone. I have this iPad. I have an iPod. He says, you shouldn't buy anything else. Yeah, I have everything you need. Which is also great marketing. But he says, what really got me, Travis, is that he said, we get that question all the time. People coming here saying, I have everything. What else can I buy?
Right.
That's an indication of people love your product.
Yep.
And that rounds out the marketing picture in a tremendous way.
Yeah. So let me go back and hit these points again. So, number one, be provocative. I think this is something. It's painfully obvious, but a lot of people miss it. And I forget who said it, but you can't bore people into buying, right?
Yeah, obviously.
And it seems like people forget that, their message or their delivery or even their energy in delivering something is so blasé that, it's almost like they're expecting to bore somebody into buying. You need to be provocative. Number two, integration. And so I want to draw out an example from years ago that blew me away with HP. So I was looking for a business card template, and I clicked on an ad that Hewlett Packard was paying for, and they landed me on the home page, and I had to look at 100 different options and figure out where the business card template page was. And it blew me away that a big company could get something like that so wrong. And to your point of what you're saying here is, if I clicked on an ad that was about business card templates, then they should take me to the business card template page rather than dropping me on the home page and making me look for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I wanted to mention that example because there's a lot of people. I'm in a mastermind, and we were reviewing some people's websites, and they're making that common mistake, bringing everybody to the home page rather than the item that they clicked on and they expected to see. And then make an offer that they would love to have. So I guess the one thing that, let's take something like business card templates that's not very sexy. How would you turn something like that into an offer that they would love to have? Would it be a trial thing? Would it be, this kind of mafia offer or something that it would be tough for them to say no to?
Well, I need to actually look at, you don't pull these things off a shelf in a cookie cutter way, but there's no such thing as a non-sexy product or service. There's no such thing.
Right.
And people should recognize. Like we worked once for a asphalt company. So we had to make people fall in love with asphalt. Now, how do we do that? I mean, asphalt is hot, black, smelly stuff that appears to be a total commodity. But we had them develop some strains of asphalt. One that when snow landed on it, it melted almost immediately. So we could then sell that as a safety item for schools and corporate parking areas, etc. So suddenly asphalt became sexy and that. And then we had them create another strain that was much more environmentally friendly. So all the businesses and even individual residences for people that are eco-friendly passionately, and they had to pay more for this. They both had to pay more for this type of, significantly more, for this type of asphalt. But it became sexy. So never think your product cannot become sexy. I always had a sort of a running feeling in the back of my mind, and someday, I want to buy a manure company. Because everybody says, oh, manure company, oh, God, what a terrible thing, how's it with manure? I bet I'll come up with some sexy manure product, and I'll offer them in a way that will be irresistible. I want that challenge.
Yeah, I think sexy is relative to the audience that you're speaking to, right?
Yeah, like, look, we sell annuities here for one of our clients sells annuities, right? Annuities are like root canal, which
right.
So, but what's an annuity really? I'll tell you how we make it sexy in a second. Annuities really mean you'll never run out of money if you live to 150.
Right.
That's what annuity means. That's sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the word annuity. Don't even use the word.
Right.
Would you like to have enough money to make sure? Would you like to make sure that you never run out of money as long as you live, even if you live to 150?
Heck yeah.
I just left my mother this morning. She's 93. She may go to 100 plus. I mean, I happen to be her annuity, but the ability you can turn something around and look at what it stands. If I met you at a party and said, "Hey, you want to talk about annuities?" You'd walk right away.
Right.
If I said to you, "Hey, how about if I could tell you about a way that you'd never run out of money, nothing illegal, nothing immoral, nothing shady?" You say, "How do you do that?" And then I'm right into the presentation.
Right. Yeah, great point. Listen, we're starting to run a little long on time. What do you say we segue into the lightning round? I sent you 3 questions over there. Did you get a chance to look at those?
I did, but I don't have it. I do not have them in front of me. But I did.
I'm going to ask them just as long as you gave them some thought, and you can probably answer these just off the top of your head anyway. So
yeah, no, I've thought about all of them. I've always thought about all of them.
Cool. So let me ask you, what book or program was pivotal or pivot or key?
Pivot.
Yeah, pivotal. Yeah, pivotal. What book or program was pivotal in educating you or helping you get a deeper grasp on business? And it could be a book or a program.
I can answer it easily. It was My Years at General Motors, written by Alfred Sloan, the founder of the modern GM. And I read it as a pretty young man, and it was an amazing book. And what I really, I don't like books that just work only on your motivation. This really showed me something interesting. And Sloan said that the car business in the United States, and he wrote, he was talking about when there really was no car business.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the early dealerships had something that all of us forget that they would have had to have. They had to have haystacks and fields so they could teach people how to drive. People didn't know how to drive.
And what was the name of that again?
My Years with General Motors.
My Years.
By Alfred Sloan. Yeah, and it's the Sloan School of Business at MIT.
Ah, okay.
That's the Sloan.
Yeah, I've actually heard of that. Sorry about that. I've actually heard about that, but I've never read it, so I'm going to put it on my list. What were you saying?
Yeah. He talks about 3 reasons the car industry grew. One was the used car, the model year. When I grew up, model years were like big deals. We used to have a car, unveil a new model year, but that's just a human fabrication, a marketing fabrication. And it made people want to switch out from their model year to another one because it was cooler and sexier.
Right.
So the model year, the car loan, so you could look at a car and you say, hey, I can't afford that $1,800 or whatever it was at the time. But I just get a loan, pay for it by the month. It's as ingenious as the house mortgage.
Right.
And third was the used car market. Because if you wanted to get rid of your car to buy the new model, you had to have a place to sell it to. And those were the things that drove the car industry into the behemoth it became.
Wow. And to think those things didn't even exist.
Yeah.
Those need to be conceptualized and implemented for an industry to grow, and then it grew into this gigantic behemoth. It's just a testament of imagining an outcome and then executing.
Yep.
What's one of your favorite tools or pieces of technology that you've recently discovered, if any, that you'd recommend to other business owners, and why?
It's also easy for me. I mean, I have been a BlackBerry freak, and I've had an iPad for years that I never used. I don't know why. I actually lived in semi-fear. I'm exaggerating, but of my BlackBerry not working, and when it would not work, I'd freak out, and then my IT guy fixed it no matter what time it was, because I was a real BlackBerry guy. But it broke one day, and I said, "Hey, I can pull my emails off of my Gmail account on my iPad," and I started using the iPad, let's say 4 months ago. Wow, that's the greatest thing. It is the greatest productivity enhancer. First of all, I was afraid I couldn't type as fast and send messages as fast on anything besides my BlackBerry. Wrong. It's much easier to do it on the iPad. Secondly, I can zoom around online while I'm just sitting. I get up every morning at 7 a.m. I spend 2 hours listening to the news with one ear, half an ear, and working on emails for 2 hours. Then I go for a hike with my dog before I go to the office. But those 2 hours, I'm dreaming, thinking, going on LinkedIn, looking at things I never thought about, checking out words, going on, just dreaming, free associating, and I can do it all on my iPad. Go to various websites, just generate ideas, look up people, ideas, facts I'm not sure about. And it's such a great thing, and I can, get emails from people with links to them, go to the links, look them down, trace down their competitors. The iPad is just phenomenal.
Right. I second that. I agree with you. What quote would best summarize your belief or your attitude in business?
I forget the exact quote. There's so many, but I forget the exact quote, and people have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was Teddy Roosevelt who said it. And it was something about the man, obviously man or woman, being in the arena. And what it really drives at is that there are people in life who observe, and there are people in life who do. When you do, you have to face the risks, the failures, the challenges, the fears, setbacks. But I always prefer to be in the arena. I can't even watch a Broadway show because I'm not on stage. I'm sitting there like an idiot watching the show. To me, I need to be in the arena, and I think that's the place where we separate doers from the pretenders.
Yeah, I think it's something like victory goes to the man in the arena with blood on his face, and Yep. Yeah.
That's the gist of it. Yeah, I love that. I used to memorize it. I also think that another one that's important to me is from Mies van der Rohe, the architect, that less is more.
Yeah.
We wind up doing lots of things, but we never ask ourselves, or most of us don't ask ourselves, in the midst of all this stuff I'm doing, what should I focus on?
Right.
To make upstream progress all the time. And if you do that, you narrow down, you will be more successful and more happier and more effective.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Vladimir Klitschko, I think I just murdered his name, the boxer, says something very similar to the quote you talked about, the guy in the arena, and he says, "No fight, no win." If you don't fight, you don't win.
It's like I was asked to speak at Wharton 2 years ago, the business school. Me, somebody who was hardly educated, in terms of a formal education. And I said I would be willing to speak to the faculty and the students, but I have to be able to name the speech. And they said, sure, what do you want to call it? And before I tell you the title, it's because I don't have much respect for teaching in a vacuum.
Right.
I said, I want to title the speech to the Wharton students and faculty, quote, everything you learn here is a waste of time, unquote. And they said, oh my God, you really want to call that? And I said, yes. They let me do it. I had a packed house. It was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but that relates to the arena.
Right.
For a college professor, everything works.
Right.
Because they're not in the arena.
Right. Yeah, because they don't have to deal with the repercussions of where the rubber meets the road. So I totally agree with you.
No risk, tenure, you're there, everything works, it's all an equation, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I take arena any day of the year.
Right.
And I hope that everybody listening feels the same way because it's damn fun.
Yep. I completely agree. Listen, how do people connect with you, Mark?
It's easy. They can email me at Mark, M-A-R-K, at MSCO.com. That's Mark Stephen Charles Oscar, MSCO.com. Or they can go to yourmarketingsucks.com, which is just real easy to remember, yourmarketingsucks.com. And just make an appointment to talk to me, schedule an appointment. There's a schedule there. There's no charge, and happy to talk to you. I love to talk to business people.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Remember that you can find all the links to the books and the resources mentioned in the show notes. Just go to rockstarentrepreneur.network.com. You'll find where there's a drop down on the menu right there that says radio show. You can click through and go to the radio show, go to the specific show that you're interested in, and you'll find all the resources right there. Now, before I close the show today, I'd like for you to think about committing to 2 things that will help fast forward your success. Okay? So think about this. The first is find a mastermind where you can be surrounded by people that have an entrepreneurial mindset so that you can help eliminate those negative self-limiting thoughts and focus on constant forward, bold progress. Okay? It's extremely powerful when you surround yourself with people like this. The second thing that I really want you to think about doing, find a mentor that has already achieved what you dream of and see if that person will personally mentor you and your business. These 2 things will make a drastic improvement in your business and in your life. So think about that. My quote for today comes from Henry Ward Beecher. And the quote reads, "Man's best successes come after their biggest disappointments." This is Travis Lane Jenkins signing off for now. To your incredible success, my friend. Take care.